welcome to Faith on Film, a program designed to keep you aware and informed on everything that's happening in the world of faith and family films. Now, in this case, I'm not sure this is a family film because it does have violence, but this is something that I think is very needed, possibly more as an outreach type film. I think you'll be interested to hear all about this movie. Now, the director is here with me today. Joth is an award-winning filmmaker whose film career spans more than 27 years and includes over 80 movies and television shows for all the major Hollywood studios. Joth got his start on the set of Pet Sematary 2 and then went on to work as a production assistant on the sitcom Coach on the Universal lot before ultimately landing at Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment. Oh my goodness. It was only after being accepted into the prestigious Directors Guild training program that Joth left Amblin to become an assistant director. After years of ADing on everything from feature films like Starship Troopers, End of Days, and Suicide Kings with Christopher Walken, to TV series such as CSI, Party of Five, and Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. I used to watch that regularly. Among others, Joth made his move to director's chair with several award-winning short films, as well as the television series The Encounter. Now, Joth's full-feature directorial debut is on the suspense thriller Night of the Sicario, which is what we're going to talk about today, starring, and I hope I get this name right, Natasha Henstridge. If not, he can correct me, which released last month. Josh, welcome to Faith on Film. It's such an honor to have you, man.
Thanks, Isaac. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Now, again, we want to talk about the movie Night of the Sicario, but before we get into that, I want to take this first segment and learn a little bit about who you are, how you got started in filmmaking, and so that our audience will get to know all about you before finding out all about your movie.
Yeah, I've always been into creative things. I was a musician as a teenager and was in a band. I was a drummer. And my band and I, we loved making music, but this being the 80s, we also made a lot of music videos to go with them. And I always really enjoyed the process of filmmaking. And I loved it so much that, we started making short films as well. And several of my band members have gone on to continue to be musicians. And I really stuck with the film side, and I decided I wanted to go and be a filmmaker for a living. Went to film school, and I've been doing it ever since.
Now, were you a believer at the time?
I was, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was actually a group of guys from my church youth group.
Ah, okay. We have similar paths. I've had a band since I was, 14 or so in church. Also, I grew up in the church. Now, were there any challenges as you begin to think about becoming a filmmaker? Were there any challenges that you encountered, especially that it doesn't seem like you really went into Christian filmmaking?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I wanted to go into Christian filmmaking, but this is late 80s, early 90s. It wasn't really a thing. It didn't really exist. And I was fortunate that I had some opportunities that got me kind of fast-tracked into the Hollywood studio world pretty quick. There's very little crossover. Well, more so now, but back then there was very little crossover, if any, from the studio feature world to any kind of faith-based material. Although I did actually work on something for Focus on the Family Films back in the 90s, which, Focus on the Family is still around, but the film division is long defunct. But that was all I could find. And so basically I decided, well, I'll bring my light to whatever projects, I can do. And, content is important to me. I'm not doing things that I consider inappropriate. However, years of work in the Hollywood studio world, there were definitely things that I might not have wanted to endorse. So ultimately, after decades in that side, I shifted to focusing more on faith-based films about 12 years ago now, because there was a season where Fireproof came out, made a big splash, and all of a sudden people were starting to think, hey, faith-based films, maybe that's a real thing. And that was around the time I started saying, you know what, if that's the case, I want to be part of that. And so I've been primarily focused in that arena since.
Well, I really believe that God calls us to various aspects of the film industry. There are some that God calls to create films that'll edify the church. Films that are specifically designed to edify me as a Christian. But then I believe there are some that are called to infiltrate the world, infiltrate Hollywood. I myself have spent most of my life, doing Christian television. But there was one season, it was a short season, 1 year, that I went to Hollywood to direct a television show. Realized it wasn't for me. But at the same time, I saw the effect that I had on people. And one of the things that was real interesting for me was that before, it was a live show that I was doing for PAX TV when they first launched. And as I was going to direct the live show, and one of the first things I did is we all got on the headset. I said, listen, I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm used to praying before I start to direct a show, and so I'm going to do one. I'm not trying to get in anything, but it makes me feel better. It makes me calm. And so I prayed just a real short little prayer, and I heard that everybody out there was like looking at each other like, what is this guy? But by the end of the week, it was a daily show, they were reminding me to pray. So I saw the impact that I had out there.
Yeah.
Even though eventually it ended up not being my calling to be in Hollywood, but at least I saw how important it is for Christians to be in Hollywood, not to make Hollywood church. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. That's great.
And so that's good that you're doing, because a lot of those movies that you were a part of, and actually this movie that we're going to talk about right now, I did read something, I guess an interview that somebody did, and they said that originally it wasn't really intended to be a faith-based film, and in fact, it technically isn't yet, but you inserted faith in it.
Me.
Yep.
Yeah, no, the script came to me. I saw a lot of great aspects to it. I like the characters, I like the plot, and so on. And now it wasn't a totally off the grid kind of. It wasn't like I needed to completely flip it on its head to add faith elements. Right. But that said, so I brought in my writing partner, Matthew Eason, and we worked on. It wasn't like I set out to add faith elements. I set out to really enrich the characters, and I wanted authentic character. A lot of action films are cardboard cutout 2D characters, and especially the bad guys. And I wanted to add depth to the characters. Okay. And so authenticity, faith is a real part of our lives for a lot of people. And so in this particular story, there's actually a handful of supporting cast members in this that I wanted to give each their own kind of unique story. And one of them is a former missionary. So she brings that faith element. And then our lead, she grew up in the church. Her father started the business that she runs as a missionary.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, then let's find out all about this movie, what the story's all about, and hear what else might have happened in the movie that you would want for us to know. All right?
Sounds good.
Folks, don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Faith on Film. We are here today with Joth Riggs, who has been involved in a lot of Hollywood movies, and yet I have him here on my show. This is such an honor for me. So listen, Joth, you just finished a movie where you combined something that doesn't normally get combined, and that is faith and action and suspense. Because most Christian movies, you mentioned in the previous segment about action movies are cookie cutters. Well, most Christian movies are also cookie cutters, and most of them do not have much suspense or action. Tell us a little bit about this film. What's the film all about?
Yeah, this particular story is about the DEA is bringing the family of a woman that has been brought to D.C. to testify against the cartel in federal court. They are transporting her family in and delivering them to the safe house. En route, they are ambushed by the cartel and manage to escape to a nearby senior living facility that's run by our character, Taylor, who is played by Natasha Henstridge. Okay. And by the way, this all happens during an oncoming Category 5 hurricane. So they manage to slip into there, but ultimately the Sicarios find out that that's where they are and are after them. And there's multiple reasons why they're after them. But obviously, Natasha's character wants it's the husband and a young girl. She really wants to protect them. She wants to protect her 5 senior residents in the home, and she's got some pretty bad guys to protect them against.
Now, I understand this is an R-rated movie. So I'm assuming you didn't intend it for the faith-based market that supposedly doesn't go watch R-rated movies. Because, by the way, that's another pet peeve of mine. Is if it's a Christian movie, they see something, oh, it's PG or that's not a good thing. It's an R-rated movie. But they'll go watch secular movies that are R-rated. But you know what? I digress. That's something for another show. Are you afraid that maybe this movie won't get any attention from the faith-based audience? Does it matter to you?
The funny thing, this is not a faith-based film.
Mm-hmm.
This is an action film. However, as a believer, I wanted to infuse faith elements into the character. So we can either have an action film that is completely secular, or we can have an action film with faith elements. All right, I'm bringing in the faith elements. And by the way, yes, it's rated R. That actually surprised me, though. It's only for violence. There's no language, no inappropriateness or anything like that. And in fact, you virtually see all of the violence in the trailer that's out there. It's basically bad guys getting killed. That's it. Apparently, we killed a few too many bad guys and got a rated R. But beyond that, I wouldn't say there's anything objectionable. And really, who objects to bad guys getting killed?
I have no problem with bad guys getting killed. Now, of course, having said that, I imagine it's not a movie that you would take your 5-year-old kid to watch, right?
No, this is entertainment for mature people that understand that it's not real.
Right.
If somebody gets shot, they're not really dead, and that's not real blood. It's all fake, people.
Now, how can people watch this movie? I know it came out about a month and a half ago. How can they watch it now?
Well, as we tape this, it actually comes out in theaters tonight, but I know this is on a little bit later. It's on Paramount Plus.
Paramount Plus, okay.
Streaming on Paramount Plus. Yep.
All right. Well, I would highly.
By the way, I should add that in foreign markets, it's called Blindsided.
Oh.
Night of the Sicario in the U.S., Blindsided overseas.
And what would be the reason for that?
Well, it was
obviously a marketing
blindsided.
Situation.
Yeah, it was Blindsided when we made it, and Paramount and Saban Films picked up the film, and they changed it and shifted the marketing just more for the action audience.
Right. Well, I tell you, I haven't seen it myself, but I really do look forward to seeing it. I think it's good to have films that can be more mainstream, but still maintain a level of redemption, maintain a level of,
What was important specifically was the fact that I wanted to make sure that faith was respected.
Yes.
It's not treated as those idiots over there. It was treated as the people that have faith are people that are wise and mature and are shown respect for their faith.
Right.
So that was a very intentional decision on my part.
Well, I'm glad you did that. I'm glad you tackled that, and I really look forward to seeing the film. Again, they can see it on Paramount Plus. Is there a website that they can maybe go to just make sure to know what's happening with the film even beyond that?
There is a Facebook page for Night of the Sicario, and it has specifics on where to go see it in theaters and so on. It's on Paramount Plus for now, but I mean, it'll be, we're continuing to roll it out, so there will be more information for it.
Yeah, that way people can follow it, and then when it moves into somewhere else, they'll know where to find it. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, I want to talk with you about something that I've been seeing lately on Facebook. There's a group of Christian filmmakers. And again, I've always wondered, well, is a movie a Christian film, or is it that the director's a Christian? What exactly has made it a Christian film? But anyway, there's a group of Christian filmmakers, and there's been a lot of debate going on there lately about what is acceptable in a Christian film, specifically things like violence, things like language, and does a Christian film have an altar call for it to be a Christian film? I mean, it's all kinds of debates, and I want to kind of get your opinion on that. All right?
Absolutely.
Folks, don't go away. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to Faith on Film. We are here with Joth Riggs today, who, again, as we talked in the previous segment, has directed a movie that is not your typical faith-based movie, but then again, it's not a faith-based movie. It's a action movie with a little bit of faith element put into it, because Joth is a Christian, and I think it's important to infiltrate the world of entertainment with at least how did he say it? He said, respect for faith. But Joth, as I mentioned, there's a lot of debate on what does go into a faith-based film and what shouldn't go into the faith-based film. And I've been seeing the debate back and forth. And one of the things that people seem to really object to would be foul language. And I don't want to really say where I stand on it, but I know that it's hard to make a character feel realistic if he says things like, "Oh gosh," as opposed to something else. What is your thought on that, as it relates to Christian films now, not the secular films like yours that had the faith in it?
Well, I'm glad you make that distinction. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think that's really the difference. In the faith-based film arena, I don't necessarily think there's a place for foul language. It seems out of place. I mean, there's no foul language in the Bible, at least not what we would kind of perceive as such. Mm-hmm. I also, I don't use that language personally, and I, as a director, I kind of have a hard time asking an actor to.
Right.
Yes, I get that in real life there are real circumstances where people do that. And look, the movie I just did, it's about cartel hitmen. I have a feeling they use that kind of language, but you know what? It wasn't necessary to tell my story.
Right.
And I look at the example of television from the broadcast era, in the 90s. I mean, there's great dramatic television, and they don't use inappropriate words. Now we're in the streaming world, and that's different. But with broadcast standards, they still seem to manage to tell really compelling stories. And they were creative about their, showing a really bad guy who might say something. There are plenty of more creative ways to show the same thing without having to do that. Now, personally, if I'm watching something that's in the secular realm, I'm not that offended. I'm not offended by it at all, frankly. And I don't necessarily like a ton of it, but I'm a discerning, mature adult, and I can separate it. But I probably don't want to see that in faith-based content. I think it's okay to have some lines.
No, I agree with you. And I know that in comedy, comedians tend to use like the F-bombs just constantly, and they seem to think that makes things funnier. And I know somebody actually said that. I said, but when you use it, that's what makes it funny. But I've heard lots of comedians that don't do that at all. Right. And they're funny.
Yeah. That's right. There's some great, clean comedians out there. Absolutely.
Yep. And so in Christian films, then your thought is it really doesn't belong in a Christian film. And of course, there's, and I don't know where you sit on this, but there's also levels of profanity. One versus the F-bomb versus maybe something lighter. And I don't know if there's a distinction that would be made there, like nothing at all that would resemble it.
Discernment is the key. Just discernment across the board.
That's awesome. Well, I'm surprised that had even become a debate on this platform, but apparently it has. And of course, the other one has to do with does a faith-based movie have to have a call to redemption or a call to salvation, as opposed to just being a good film with some good principles in it?
Well, I think if it has to have anything, it completely marginalizes the film. I mean, if we're restricted by these kind of boundaries, then I mean, look, there's a wonderful place for sermons, and if you want to film a sermon, fantastic. But if you're trying to make a movie, then make a great movie, and then infuse it with your faith. And if there is an authentic, organic story that involves an altar call, fantastic. But if not, don't force it in there, because to be honest with you, I think you're probably going to shut down a lot of people that will immediately realize that's not real. That doesn't feel organic to the character.
Yeah.
You have to let the story and the character drive and motivate everything. And if it's authentic to them, then it's going to be authentic to the viewers. And that's how things resonate with viewers. Anytime they are disconnected from the fictional world that you're portraying, then they are no longer going to buy into whatever message you're trying to sell. They're going to now disconnect. It's called suspension of disbelief. You want to keep your audience engaged in the world you're creating. And I think in some cases, you just want to, like you did with your prayers, you want to lead by example. And as I did in Night of the Sicario, I respect the characters with faith in this film. Hopefully, as viewers, we can learn to respect others with faith as well.
Wonderful. Well, Joth, thank you for your insights on this. And thank you for taking the time to come on the program today and just share this with our audience. Is there a way that people can maybe follow you personally, not the movie, but you personally, your Facebook page?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook and happy to connect with people.
So where do they go on Facebook? What do they look for? Joth Riggs?
It's under my name. The good news is I'm the only Joth Riggs on the planet, so I'm easy to find.
So, but remember, it's Joth, not Josh.
That's right, Joth.
There you go.
Hippie parents, they thought it was groovy.
Well, thank you so much, man. Folks, don't go away. We're going to be right back.
Thanks, Ed.
Welcome back to Faith on Film. I hope you enjoyed today's program as much as I did. It was very interesting to talk to Joth about that debate whether, of what is acceptable in a Christian movie. Of course, I also want to remind you that if you are watching this program on a television station or network or streaming platform, just write them and give them a thank you note for carrying this program. And of course, I want to hear from you, so write me at faithonfilmtv@gmail.com. That's faithonfilmtv@gmail.com. Until next week, take care.